Good morning again, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning for this breakout session with Keron Thompson. I'm going to introduce Keron Thompson and then he will take over and begin the session. Keron Thompson has been an educator for over 20 years. He's a musician, a vocal coach, and a songwriter. He has held positions of music director, choir leader, and band leader within the New Testament Church of God. He believes that excellence is not an act, but a habit. He's married and has 2 boys. He was born in Manchester and currently resides in Montego Bay and serves at the Montego Bay New Testament Church of God. Let's make welcome Keron Thompson.
Thanks for that introduction and welcome everyone to this session that has been entitled Discovering the Heart in the Art. I am hopeful that at the end you would have found some use with it and you'll be able to practice some of the things that you would have learned in your own ministry. I want to get right into it as we're a little bit behind the time that we should have started. So if you have questions that you wish to ask, you can you can ask it in the chat. The moderator will be able to let me know these questions, and as best as I can, I will try to address each of them. So, discovering the heart in the art. This is no secret. In fact, it is a proven scientific fact that music does wonders for the human body. It can help to treat mental illness. It can help to improve memory. Of course, it can lead to better learning. And these are proven medical facts. Music can also help to lower anxiety. It affects our mood, and I'm sure you can testify to that. If you're feeling down or discouraged, sometimes the song can change your entire mood. It helps with symptoms of depression, and these are emotional things that it can help. It also helps in body functions. It can help to manage pain. It can help your heart health. It can decrease fatigue, and it can boost exercise performance. So music is very powerful, and that's undeniable. Even the scientists have proven that. And so with great power comes great responsibility. And so we need to be responsible with this art. And so I have a question. Why do I play, or why do you play? I'm not sure if everyone online is a musician, but just a question, why do I play? If you can, I'd love if you could type a response in the chat. And at the same time, I'm going to ask the moderator, if she will, just to insert that poll. So that question is asked, why do I play? And there's some options I want you to select. All right? I'm going to allow for, let's say, a minute of this activity, just to get our feedback on why you play. So you can go ahead, select your option, and I will return. All right. So people have different reasons for playing. Some of them do it for leisure. And of course, the responses can be varied. We play because some of us are good at it. I personally started doing piano classes at a small age. And so that's how I started music. But I was not enjoying the piano classes. It somehow was getting boring for me. And I guess it was fortunate, looking back. Where I used to live, there was a church nearby. And it seemed as if every night this church had activity. So I could hear them practically 7 days a week having church. And what I started doing was, while they were singing their choruses, I tried to see if I could play along. And really that's how I started learning to play by ear. And so some of us started or play music because we have almost a natural ability, a talent if you would want to say. Some persons play music because it's a job. This is something that they do to earn a living. Others play it for the hype, to be seen, to be noticed, to be acknowledged by others. We have different motives for playing music. I want to suggest, though, that our talents, whatever they are, were given to us by God and should be used for His glory alone. So even if it is for a job, yes, we work as unto the Lord. So in this session, just in case you're curious what we will cover, in this section, we're going to focus on 3 things. 1, how to play together in a band setting. Secondly, we want to look at the roles of the musician, and finally, we want to look at band etiquette. Probably you're saying band etiquette, but there are some you may consider do's and don'ts of while playing in a band. I'm getting a notification saying that the volume is low. So if you're able to boost the volume up, tech team, it would be appreciated. All right. I guess I will know when the volume has improved, and if it is better, please notify me also. So, how to play together in a band. We're going to be looking on that aspect first, and I'm going to be playing with the word play. All right, so we're looking at those 4 letters and an acronym. I guess it can be an acronym, actually a word. But the first one we want to look at is the P. And the P for me is practice. There is absolutely no shortcut or substitution for practice. Regardless of your age or your experience, you have to practice. And this is a big downfall for quite a few musicians. Not enough time spent on their craft. And so, year in, year out, you hear the same sound. There is no improvement in skill. And this cannot be good, because there should be continuous growth as you play your instrument. Now, if it is hard to practice, maybe it is good to learn how to develop a habit. And so I did some research and found out that this seems to be proven and tested and proven how you can develop habits. And so I want to suggest to you some things you can do to develop a habit of practice. All right? The first thing, clearly decide on a new habit. What this can be, for example, you're going to spend 5 minutes at a reasonable time when you think that this 5 minutes will be available. If you are a night person and you do lots of activities in the night, maybe you need to schedule this for the daytime and vice versa. So decide on a number of minutes you want to spend in practice. So make that decision. Then you want to never allow exceptions. So you want to say, no matter what, at this time, for this amount of time, I will be practicing. And if you're a family person, you have to probably communicate with the family. This is my practice time. I'm not able to attend to anybody now. If you're single, it's much easier. But you need to, no exceptions. Absolutely no exceptions, because once you break that trend, then the habit cannot be formed. Let others know about your goal. So, again, tell your family members, tell your friends, I'm trying to develop this habit of practicing. This can help you as they can encourage you to maintain this practice or this habit. Visualize yourselves having a particular or behaving a particular way. So in your mind, you should visualize yourself playing better, whichever instrument that you play. And by visualizing yourself and imagining yourself, these can be realized, and it's easier to realize them this way. In developing your habit, I want you to persist until it is automatic. In other words, you should feel uncomfortable when you're not practicing. That's how persistent you should be. So today I'm not feeling so well physically, but I feel even worse that I'm not able to practice. That's what I'm hoping that the habit can develop. And then, of course, once you see yourself gradually developing this habit, then you want to reward yourself. How you reward yourself is totally up to you. But if you have persisted and you've developed this habit, encourage yourself by rewarding yourself. And maybe you can include other members of your family or close friends with that aspect. Now, practice is not just individual, it is cooperative, because we're talking about playing in a band. And so it's important for the band to spend time practicing together. It is obvious. You can see and you can hear when a band is well rehearsed. There is no if or but. And so this is a challenge sometimes. When people have different schedules, people have different priorities. But practicing as a band can only do playing as a band much better. All right? I have been in circles with Christian musicians and with non-Christian musicians. And I find it almost depressing sometimes when I notice that the non-Christian musicians are more eager to spend time in rehearsals than the Christian musicians when we are presenting this to our God. And so I look at it and I'm sometimes very, emotional, saying, how is it that they are so committed to their rehearsals for that event, and our event is to a much higher calling and we are not so committed. I wish that's something that could have been swapped. But we need to practice as musicians together. The next, so that's P for practice. The L for me stands for listen. A good musician is a good listener. And we not only need to listen to each other because we're playing together, and sometimes this can be a challenge, especially if you are working with equipment that is not assisting this process. Maybe you don't have a monitor as a keyboardist or bass player or guitarist. And so you're struggling to hear the sounds from the band members. Or maybe the voices are too loud in the monitors, and so all you're really hearing are vocals and not enough instruments. This is something that you'll have to iron out with your tech team. But we need to listen to each other while playing. And of course, we are not playing by ourselves. In most cases, we are accompanying singers, vocalists. And so we'll also need to listen to these vocalists. Listening, though, and this is probably more important, is listening to the Spirit. We're in a worship service, and of course, the message is being preached, and it comes to a point in time when the service is coming to a close. Normally, the praise leader will suggest a song suitable based on the message. Sometimes your pastor will give you a song to sing. But there are times when the Lord speaks to you as an instrumentalist and lays a song on your heart, which is a song to shift the atmosphere. And if you're not listening, if you're distracted doing anything else, you may miss this opportunity to take the worship experience to a higher level. And so while we need to listen to vocalists, while we need to listen to each other as musicians, we need to listen to the voice and the Spirit of God. A, in play. So we have practice, We have listen and know. The A is for arrange. Each song, well, not every song, but once you're starting a set, your vocalist and the band need to know how to start it. This can only happen if it is rehearsed. Sometimes on the spur of the moment, because you've done a certain song so many times, you can rely on a familiar introduction. But if it is a new song, or even if you want to do a change in the introduction, practice is needed for that. So, as a band, you are not fully responsible, but I would probably say mostly responsible for the introductions, how the song starts, how the song ends, how it transitions from song to song. Your praise leader or singer can give you or tell you what they want, but most of the time you are free to do this sort of thing. Now, arranging doesn't have not only talks about how a song starts, end, and how it transitions, but which instruments are playing at what time. That's also a part of arrangement. And dynamics is not something that is practiced a lot in the worship service or by musicians. And by dynamics, I mean when there either are periods of loudness or softness. So if we're singing a worshipful song, let us say, and I'm going to come back to this song eventually. I don't even know if are you able to hear the sound of the keyboard?
Yes, we are.
Great. So a song like, oh, only you are holy. Only you are worthy. How that song starts can affect the flow of the song. If all the instruments are in and the volume is loud, it could kill the flow of this song. But if you listen to its original version, you'll notice that at this point in the song, the volume is not very loud. But once they get to the section that says, "For there's no one else like you, who is faithful, ever true," it starts to build. And the volume and intensity increases. So in arranging, include these things just to cause a certain difference. It does make a difference. Finally, in playing together as a band, the Y is for yield. The best way to play well together is to yield to one another. So everyone has different individual skill levels. And the goal is not to stand out. The goal is not to stand out as an individual. But the goal is to stand out, if anything, as a collective group. And so sometimes this may mean that the keyboardist will have to probably use simpler chords or a simpler progression because the other persons who you're playing with are not there yet. And this can be, for some, not so enjoyable because you've learned these chords and you want to use them in this song. But unfortunately, the other members of the band are not at that same level. And if you think when you do your fancy run and everybody else is simple, that it sounds good, that's a big mistake because you're not playing together as a band. So sometimes you'll have to yield. Assess the individual skill levels and adjust. Whatever you play, the goal is always to play as one, not simply to sound amazing on your own. And so, while you play together as a band, as a collective unit, you need to practice, listen to each other. You're creative, and so you're going to be arranging stuff, and of course, yield to each other as we worship God. Now, let's get into this section. Hoping there can be a bit more interaction, but let's see how it works out. The roles of the musician. And of course, we're speaking in our church setting. Primary role is to, well, first and foremost, you have to be present. Being there is something that is probably understated, but being present and not being just being present, but being on time. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But in rehearsals, there are some things I can suggest, okay? There are persons who are vocalists, who are really good singers, but some of them are not so good singers. And so, as a musician, it would be good if you can guide them into suggesting appropriate keys for their vocal range. Some persons have good falsetto or head voices, and some persons they're not able to switch comfortably, so it sounds pretty weak when they switch. As a musician, I would encourage you to find out the vocal range of your praise leaders, because this is going to help you in choosing the right key for that praise singer, so that it's not too low or it's not too high. There is a trend I've noticed in churches generally. Those churches who sing strictly, use a hymnal and they read the music from the hymnal to play, the congregation for that church normally sings higher than other congregations who don't rely on the set key for that hymn or that song. So I've noticed in my experience that Adventists, Anglicans, Baptists, these churches, the singers in them sing high. Compared to Pentecostal churches, the singers generally sing lower. So as a musician, you're going to need to be able to know the vocal range of your praise leader. The song I started singing, Only You Are Holy, it's sung, of course, by Donnie McClurkin originally, and it is in the key of F. And to know the range of a song, all you need to identify is the lowest sound in the song and then the highest sound in the song. So, in the male voice, only you are holy. That sound is probably, it is the lowest sound in pitch in the song. And then the highest pitch, for there's no one else like you. There's nothing higher than that. So, the vocal range for this song, based on the keyboard, is from a C, an octave, to the next D. And so when you're selecting this song, or a priest member or leader selects this song, you have to ensure that their vocal range is that wide. So it is just one tone above an octave. And it doesn't have to be in the original key, but you need to ensure that whichever key you choose, that singer is able to go and hit those low notes and also extend to hit the high notes. All right? For suggesting keys not only for vocal, for praise leaders, but also for those who are doing special items. Regularly, persons are asked to do solos or even duets, and you may have to rehearse with them. And you ask them to start the song, naturally, and they start it fine, and then there's a point in the song where they stop singing because they can't reach it, all right? They'll, of course, tell you to lower the key, but then you can suggest an even better key based on the fact that you heard them, struggling. So suggest appropriate keys. Establish intros and transitions. So in rehearsals, you want to definitely allow everyone to know how and when to start. Both musicians and the singer should be on the same page. I've played an introduction about 3 times already, either because the singer was not ready, or the singer didn't remember, or something else happened. So there's going to be need for a bit of flexibility, but establish an introduction and transition. And of course, we are a Pentecostal church, and so the Spirit can lead the singer to go sing something over. We have to be flexible as musicians to accommodate that. But in rehearsals, there's going to be a certain script, and we follow it as best as possible. So the role of musicians during rehearsals: select appropriate keys for the singers and establish the intros and transitions. For the worship service, your role is to follow the praise leader. Follow, not lead. Follow. And while our role or our act of worship is important, we must understand that we are really accompanying the singers. We both work together, but we are accompanying the singers. And so we need to yield so that the praise leader can have his or her way. All right? There needs to be some sort of effective communication between the musician and the praise leader. While they're singing, they probably can't say what they want. And so I believe it is good to develop either hand signals or even a look that can suggest what they want to do. Sometimes they communicate this on the phone, and that's good if that's done. But I encourage you to develop signals between you and the praise leader, so that if there is any switching, if there's any change, that both of you will know what to do, and then, of course, this is communicated with the band. And of course, not every church musician has in-ear monitors and someone on the microphone telling everybody what to do. So as band members, you too have to develop your own language so that you're communicating together. In the worship service, we are a Pentecostal church, and a lot of our pastors need to hear the sound to enhance their preaching. And so, because no pastor is permanent at any church, I believe there are rotations done, however frequently. But pastors come and pastors go. And you may get a pastor that needs this type of enhancement within his preaching. So if it's not something you're used to, you're going to have to probably learn some preacher chords. But we want to flow with the pastor as musicians, all right? YouTube has so many videos out on preacher chords. So that's something that you can use to enhance your playing or to develop your playing. Another role that I would want to suggest that a musician have is to fuel creativity. We were created in the image and likeness of God. God is a creative being. Look around us, how intricately our bodies are designed, how everything just works perfectly. And we're created in His image and likeness. And so we too are creative beings. And so each of us has creativity within us. It's just a matter of getting it out. And I want to suggest 4 things we can try to do to get creativity out. The first thing is to explore. And by explore, I mean ask questions, use your senses, discover or learn new things, create. These are things, create new experiences. These are things that can help us to explore. All right? Seeing an artwork, visiting a different country, those who love to travel, listening to a genre of music that you don't normally listen to. These are ways you can explore. Now remember, we're trying to fuel creativity, all right? So, of course, we need to guard ourselves what we look at and what we listen to. And so be careful as you explore. The next, and it's 4 E's. The next is express. So after exploring, you need to express. And a lot of us have cell phones that have a recording app on it. An idea comes to you. Record it on spot. Maybe you can't record it exactly where you are. Maybe it's something you want to put pen to paper with, but you want to express this physically, whether you're going to record this on your phone or write it down on something. New expressions, and it is, you don't have to be afraid if what you express doesn't make much sense, because you'll sift through that eventually. But don't be afraid to express, all right? The next E is experiment. All right, new expressions of creativity often cause a stir, meaning not everybody is so welcoming of this new thing. And so I'm going to read something for you. This was found in one paper in American, and it was speaking about a new form of music in the church. And the article says, there are several reasons for opposing it. 1, it's too new. 2, it's often worldly, even blasphemous. The new Christian music is not as pleasant as the more established style. Because there are so many new songs, you can't learn them all. It puts too much emphasis on instrumental music rather than godly lyrics. This new music creates disturbances, making people act indecently and disorderly. The preceding generation got along without it. It's a money-making scam, and some of these new music upstarts are lewd and loose. End of quote. I was surprised to find out that this article was about this hymn, When I Survey the Wondrous Cross, that was written in 1723. That's what they wrote about the hymn, When I Survey the Wondrous Cross. And so in each society and culture, not everyone accepts newness. Persons are going to say the exact same thing that this article said. But we must still experiment. We must still experiment, because out of it can come something absolutely beautiful. And what is probably rejected now will be accepted later. So don't be afraid to experiment. So we explore, we express, we experiment, and the final E to fuel creativity is to evaluate. This needs to be individual evaluation and collaboratively evaluation, or collaboratively evaluate. So share your thoughts with someone who can give you good criticism. All right. Not many persons are like this, so you're going to have to really be selective in who you want to throw your ideas on, because some persons are just dream killers from the get-go and are pretty negative. So choose those persons carefully who you want to throw your ideas on. Creativity is not only about generating ideas. It involves making judgments and decisions about them. Almost all creative work will invariably need to go under rigorous process of editing, developing, and tweaking before it can be considered a finished work. So, in fueling creativity, if you can remember these 4 E's, I'm sure you'll be on your way in creating some new songs, whether they're praise and worship songs or inspirational songs. But a musician can help to fuel this creativity. So I would encourage musicians and praise leaders. I know the time is not enough already to practice a set for worship, but I encourage you to try to spend some time together trying to create new songs, trying to create new music, and introducing it to our local church and have our congregations sing these locally created songs. That would be totally amazing. Finally, I want to talk about band etiquette. Band etiquette. As was said, I'm in the education system for a while, and they have told us to stop using negative language. So we would say normally to them, don't eat inside the classroom. The word don't for persons is negative. So instead of saying don't eat inside the classroom, we're encouraged to say eat on the outside of the classroom, not on the inside of the classroom. Or just eat on the outside of the classroom, full stop. All right? It comes across easier to the listener, not as if you're forcing stuff. Band etiquette, when we're going to be looking at this, I'd want persons to think of it in positive language more than negative language. But are there some do's and don'ts, some things that band members should not do or should do during rehearsals or during a worship session? I really want your thoughts on this. And so if you can either raise your hand, I'm not sure how this will work, but if you're able to, can anybody express some do's or don'ts for band members?
If you'd like to comment, just raise your hand and I will unmute you. Or also feel free to type it in the chat. Okay, so Kian Mark says, don't show up late without notice.
Yeah, I totally agree. It is not only responsible, but it's unprofessional to show up late, plant your body in the position to play, and there is no notice given prior or even after, or even apologies given. Sad to see, some generalizations have been made of musicians because of the bad habits of a few. And I want to think it's really a few, but because of the generalizations, maybe it's more than a few. And so that's something good, being on time. And if you're not able to be on time, then you must try to call, text, let them know. And if that's not possible, as soon as you arrive, give your explanations and apologies. Thanks for that, Keron. Anyone else? All right. So punctuality is something that is needed for band members. I have sometimes, well, inadvertently been late and have found myself running towards my post as the songs have started and no one is there to accompany. So I think most, if not all of us, have been late for some reason or other. But once this is not a habit then, and we're working towards always being punctual, that's a good thing. All right, so that's the first thing I have too, being punctual. All right. If there's no other response, I'm going to probably just suggest some other things. Anything else? Okay. All right. So the other thing I want to suggest is to dress appropriately. Dressing appropriately. Different types of service require different types of dressing. And so if you are playing for a youth meeting, let's say they're having youth fellowship, you would know how to dress for that because it is a less formal setting. And so there are certain things that would be allowed. But if you are coming to a Sunday morning worship service, it wouldn't be expected to see you in a youth fellowship dressing. And this is a very sensitive topic because our culture and practice will suggest what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate. When we look on videos of worshipers or musicians abroad, we notice that it differs, and sometimes it is very casual. We have to operate within our cultural norms. We have to operate within our cultural norms. And so, while it may be acceptable in other countries to wear certain things, in our culture as Jamaicans, it is probably not advised and wouldn't be wise. And so, in dressing appropriately, I would want to say to you to approach this within our cultural practices. Of course, sometimes church leaders will dictate, or not, let's not use that word dictate, but they will ask you to dress a certain way, especially if you are not a, let's say, member of this church or attached to this church and you are simply employed. They may require that you dress a certain way when you're playing in the church services. But as we dress, it should be to honor God. Full stop. It should be to honor God. And the Bible says if our right hand offends us, what we should do. So sometimes we may have to adjust our normal dressing habit so that we can not be a hindrance to somebody who is, let's say, spiritually young or weak. Some things have to be taken into consideration while we approach dressing appropriately for church services, whether they be the main service on a Sunday or a service within the week. And dressing appropriately, I guess, should also be extended to rehearsals too. All right, so some persons may find shorts and flip-flops offensive if you come to rehearsals in them. The next band etiquette I want to discuss or talk about, unless anyone else has put something in the chat. Is there anything else there?
No, there isn't. Please unmute so we can hear you.
Am I unmuted now? Okay, I am. All right. So we need to care and clean and tune those instruments, of course, that need to be tuning. Care and clean. Sometimes it's so annoying because it's not your personal equipment. You don't think you need to care or clean it. And that rubs me the wrong way sometimes. And so something needs to be repaired or replaced, and you don't say anything to the persons who can do this, but you continue playing this damaged instrument, and you know it's going to get worse over time. The keyboard is not yours, but you can write your name on it because it's so dusty. Let's treat the equipment we use as if it was our personal equipment, even if it is not. And I'm sure you'd want to treat your personal equipment so much better. So, care and clean, and of course, tune your instruments. And a part of this can happen if you're punctual. I have been told, and something I practice, to be on time is to be before time. So if church begins at 10, arriving at 10 is not suggested. There are things that need to happen before. And so give yourself time to settle, of course, to pray together, and of course to monitor or to take care of your instruments, check the sound to see that everything is good before we start engaging in playing. One of the other things that is on the list is to have a good posture while playing your instrument. Some persons have not been formally trained, and that's okay. And you have, over the years, played the instrument in a certain posture. That is not something that is probably suggested or it is advised. But good posture does help you to play better. All right? And each instrument is unique, but generally, you'd want to keep your back upright. That's the general posture. You want to keep your back upright and both feet flat on the ground. That's, of course, whether you're standing, which you have to have both feet on, or if you're sitting. Hunching doesn't look really good. And because a lot of churches have started to stream their services and at some point in time, the camera might capture the band playing together. It visually, it doesn't look pleasant when you see bad posture. It doesn't. And so that's something I'm going to encourage band members to correct if it is wrong, because if you've been playing like this for years, it's going to take a while for you to change and know to practice good posture while playing. And the last thing about band etiquette that I want to share, there are other things, of course, but the last thing I want to share is to respect each other. I've been in circles already, and I've heard musicians discuss other musicians so negatively. There is usually competition between musicians, whether it is something that's spoken out aloud or under the covers, but there is competition where persons say, I play better than I can, this playing better or doing better at. That will always be there, I believe, because you will find people at different skill levels. Persons will start playing and persons who are going to be seasoned players. So there will always be different skill levels. But we need to respect each other enough that we don't tear down our brother or sister. Tear them down so much so that persons who probably have never ever heard them play have a no mental thing against their playing and you haven't even heard them. I like competing. I think as men, that's something that is innate. But I believe that I need to compete more with myself, in that I need to do the best that I can do, be the best that I can be. And where I see that there are persons who are not as skilled, instead of tearing, why not suggest a way that they can improve? That should be better. Instead of giving them a name, why not give them the name of somebody they can look up for some tips on how to improve their playing skills? This is needed more in our churches. And I'm coming from a generation where there was some serious competition. I'm not sure if the levels still exist, but persons were discouraged from playing. In fact, if it wasn't for a bit of determination, I probably wouldn't be playing music, because starting out playing by ear, you're bound to make mistakes. And the look alone that some persons give you, would be enough to discourage you from ever playing. So we need to be cognizant of the things that we say, even our body language. As musicians, we can't hear it. A grammar teacher, whenever he or she hears incorrect grammar, it's almost like instant. They know it's wrong, and they have to react. As musicians, when we hear an off sound, we react too. But I'm going to encourage you to try, when reacting, not to make it so obvious. Obvious to the congregation, and even if that singer or performer is looking at you, they see your face and they start to get discouraged too. So it is something, again, that needs to be worked on, but I think it's so possible. Playing in a band can be the most rewarding and fulfilling experience that you ever have in life. And conversely, it can be the most disappointing and regretful experience that you have in life. I want to suggest, again, that you kind of make it what it is. If you want to play together, you have to practice, you have to listen, you have to arrange, you have to yield to each other. When we're operating in our space, our roles can be defined by those who employ us or those who we're playing with. But we must assist as much as possible, ensuring that the best quality and best sound is produced. And this may mean us suggesting better keys, suggesting a better arrangement of the songs, transitioning better, just to ensure that everything works together. At the same time, we can help with the creativity. We can help in fueling creativity by expressing, or first exploring, by expressing, by experimenting, and then evaluating. And if we practice good band etiquette, or space, whether it is in church or outside of church, should be a better one. This session, though it never had much practical, as in keyboard or guitar or drum tips, I'm hoping that you did learn something from it and something that you can actually use in your local churches. Thank you. I don't know if anyone has any questions that you'd want to ask. You can do so at this time.
Okay, it doesn't seem like we have any questions, so we will wrap up here. Thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. I hope that this session was meaningful and informative for you. We will close out by ending with another video to end the session this afternoon. So please enjoy. Thank you for coming and have a wonderful afternoon.